Hi! In this episode, we'll create separate gem for our future framework and test an application which is going to use this gem. Also, we'll look into Rack API so we can communicate with server. So first of all, let's play with the Rack a little bit so we can understand how to fire up server and use it then in our framework. Let's go to terminal and let's go to IRB session. I'm going to use pry, but you can use simple IRB. So here first we're going to require Rack. Now, to run Rack server, we need to provide lambda or proc object to the run method. So we will have run method of the Rack, and it receives lambda, which receives environment variable. And we'll look into this environment variable a little bit later in the course. And this lambda should return an array of 3 elements. The first one is the status code. The second one is the object with headers. So for example, header content type, which equals to text HTML. And the third one is actual response text, which will just do the hello. Okay, so this is what Rack expects from lambda. So for the Rack itself, we're going to run Rack handler, and we're going to use in this course Webrick as a server dot run. So running this will start up the server on the port 8080. So if we go to browser, to the localhost 8080, you can see here the hello word. And also if we open developer tools and reload the page, you will see that the type of the response is text/HTML. Great. So we can use lambda, or we can use method or a class. So let's have a look how we can use method for the same purpose. So I'm gonna run pry again and require Rack again. And this time I'm going to define startup method, which takes environment variable, and it returns absolutely the same array. Okay, let's end this. And now we do the same thing. We do Rack handler, Webrick, run. And now as we use method, we provide method here and the symbol with the method name startup. And it does absolutely the same thing. Okay, let's have a look how we can do the same thing with a class. So this time we're going to define class application, and then we're going to define the call method. So Rack can accept the object which responds to call method, and it takes environment as well with the same response array. And we're going to end this up like this. So now we have this application, and we can do the Rack application handler webrick.run, and now we provide the application class, but Rack works with objects, so we need to instantiate this class. So we do application.new. And as this application has this call method, Rack will call this call method and will return this array like this. So now when we know all of this stuff, we are ready to create our gem, and this gem will have absolutely the same application class, which will run in test application. Okay, to create a gem, we use the bundle gem, and we call it simple MVC. And that will create a bunch of files and initialize Git repository into this folder. So we have the gem file, rake file, readme license, and also the most important for now file is simple mvc.gemspec. So let's open it up in editor. Here it is, and it is a simple specification file for the gem. So we have the load path here. We require the version of the gem, and this version actually stored in simple mvc version.rb file. So let's have a look at it. So here it is, version.rb, and that's simply a constant with the version. And here in spec file, we have this version right here. So we just store it in a separate file for convenience. So we have then we have authors, email, and the description, which we're gonna change. Like this, we have simple MVC, then we have home page, license, pretty obvious stuff. What we really want to add here is another runtime dependency. So because our application, our framework will depend on Rack, we need to add spec add runtime dependency, and we call it Rack. Let's save it, go back to terminal, let's cd into this simple MVC and run bundle. And now you can see that we use rec and simple MVC version 0.0.1. Great, so the next thing, we're going to create our application class like we did in our B session. So let's go back to editor, and here in lib folder, we have the file simple mvc.rb file. Let's open it up, and that's the main file. It requires the version, and then it opens up the module simple MVC, and here it tells us our code goes. So let's delete this comment and create class application. And inside of it, we create call method. And here we'll return absolutely the same array that we did in our B session. Okay, now let's close this and save it. And we are done with the gem for now. So let's commit this change. So I'm gonna to terminal, add all files, and I'm commit like initial commit. Okay, so the next step is to create test application which will use our gem. I'm gonna split the terminal window here, and basically on the left we always have our gem, and on the right we'll have our blog application. So let's create folder, we call it blog. Let's cd into this, and inside of this folder we create file gem file. Okay, let's go back to editor, and here as well on the right I will have the blog application always. So I'm gonna go to blog gem file, and here let's define the source rubygems.org, and then we require our gem simple MVC. But to use this gem we first need to create and install it in our system. So let's have a look how it can be done. So inside our simple MVC gem folder, let's run gem build and specify the simple mvc.gemspec file, and that will build the new gem from our spec. And now we just need to do gem install simple mvc 0.0.1.gem, and that will install gem into our system. So now we can use it. Let's go back to blog and run bundle. And we're using our simple MVC. Great. And also we're using rec, which is also cool because rec is the dependency of the simple MVC. So now we want to go to application folder and run application server like we do it, for example, with Rails. In Rails, we do Rails server like this, and the WebRig server runs. So we want to do absolutely the same thing, but instead of Rails, we'll have recup. So by running recup, we want to run rec server. If we do it right now, you will see that we need to have this config.ru file. So let's create it. Here in blog folder, I create config.ru file. And basically all we need to do is run rec application. And as we have here the application class in our simple MVC, which will be the parent of our blog application. So we will run something like this, blog application.new. And I'm gonna make Ruby mode in Emacs here. Okay, so we run in rec application blog application.new, and of course we need to require this file, and we will store it in config application.rb file. Okay, so let's create one. So in blog, we're gonna create config folder, and inside of it, we're gonna create application.rb. Okay, I need to make directory. Great. So now here, I'm gonna require our simple MVC framework, and after that, I'm gonna open module blog, and inside of this module, I'm gonna define class application, which will inherit from simple MVC application. Okay, and that's why we can actually run blog application, because it will inherit from simple MVC application, and it will inherit this call method as well. So let's save it, and let's have a try. Go back to terminal and run recup again. And now we have run it. So let's go to 9292 in our browser, and here we are. Great. There is a small issue though. Now every time when we change code in Gem, we need to rebuild it and reinstall it. That's not very convenient. For development, we can specify for our blog application to use our local gem in local folder. So let's do this. So let's go back to gem file of our blog application, and here where we require gem simple MVC, we specify path as the local path, which stores in simple MVC, like this. Okay, so now let's go back to terminal and run bundle again. And you can see that now simple MVC is used from the source of this simple MVC folder, which is cool. And let's uninstall simple MVC gem from our system. Okay. But now we need to use the bundle exec command every time when we use our application. So because, for example, let's try to run rekup again now that we do not have the simple MVC installed, and we will fail. And that happens because there is no simple MVC. We have the load error. So to fix this, we need to do bundle exec rekup, and it works. So now every time we will use bundle exec. But that's a small price to pay. We do not need to build and install Gem every time. Okay, in this episode we created Gem and test an app and saw the basics of Rek. Now we are ready to proceed with our framework. Thank you very much for your time and see you in the next episode.